Welcome to another edition of Grace Under Pressure, where my guest today is Dr. Srikumar Rao. I will tell you all about Srikumar in just a moment. Grace Under Pressure is that show that deals with this too often dismissed as the soft stuff, the caring, the commitment we exert for others. And when you do it from a leadership position, as you will definitely discover that Dr. Rao is, you come in with a point of bringing people together for common cause. So, Dr. Srikumar Rao, welcome to Grace Under Pressure.
Thank you, John. It's my pleasure to be with you today.
Well, I want to tell folks all about you, and I love the way you put together your bio. So you are an elite coach. You coach the best of the best to become better, and you work with senior executives, entrepreneurs, people who want to make a positive difference in the world. Millions have listened to your TEDx talk, and you have conduct workshops, and I love how you describe this. You will lead people into a rabbit hole. You may want to travel a short distance or a great distance, but you'll come away enlightened. And I know you from our group, 100 Coaches, founded by our colleague Marshall Goldsmith, and you are considered one of our greats and learned men and professors. So it's such a pleasure to have you. And we're going to talk about your brand new book, Modern Wisdom, Ancient Roots. It's a beautiful book and very insightful. So welcome, Srikumar.
Thank you, John. May I make a slight correction in what you just said?
Please.
Yes. My talk is a TED talk, not a TEDx talk.
Oh, did I say TEDx? I'm sorry. A TED.
Not a problem.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal. But anyway, millions and millions have watched it, and that's the big deal. So now, as I said before, people in our group and those who know you kind of consider you as a truth teller. So when you hear that, what does that mean to you, Srikumar?
Actually, I must confess, when I hear that, I kind of laugh, because the implication is that others are not telling the truth. But the reality is they are telling the truth as they see it. But the framework in which they exist is false. And most people don't know that. So that's why I laugh.
Great. Well, that's what we're going to explore today. So before we jump into your book, I want to talk about this course that you teach called Creativity and Personal Mastery, or CPM. What do you hope students, which are not necessarily students in the conventional sense, but those who want to learn, what do you want folks to gain from the course, Srikumar?
What I want to gain from them is to step closer to the vision I have, not just for them, but for everybody, including everybody who listens or sees this particular interview. And that is, when you wake up in the morning, your blood is singing at the thought of being who you are and doing what you do. That as you go through the day, you can fall to your knees in involuntary gratitude at the tremendous good fortune that has been bestowed on you, that you come radiantly alive. And every day, there is some portion of your day where you can't believe how fantastic life is.
Great. I like how you blended the concept of mastery and creativity. What was your impetus for doing that, Srikumar?
I had a pragmatic reason for including that, which is creativity is something that's very much in demand. Everybody wants to be creative. Most people believe that they are not creative, which I think is a figment. The only thing that's preventing them from being creative is the thought that they're not creative. And personal mastery is essential if you want to be a success in anything, any part of life. But here is what I discovered. I have a somewhat different take on creativity. And I don't think that creativity is a bunch of techniques that you learn as a result of which you can suddenly do things differently and, quote, creatively, unquote. I believe that when you have a certain degree of mastery and you care passionately about whatever it is that you would like to achieve, and you kind of naturally become creative because you're invested in, I want to make this happen. How can I make it happen? And you don't have to think about being creative, it emerges.
That's great. I like how you've made the concept of the process of creativity accessible rather than a kind of, oh, that's not me. So that's great. So I want to jump into this book, Modern Wisdom, Ancient Roots. What was your impetus for writing the book, Srikumar? So
Well, I know the vision I have for people. I also know, and this is increasingly true in this world of social media, people have very little time, or they perceive they have very little time. And no matter what you do, there's always a competing interest. So I wanted to convey these important thoughts, but in a digestible fashion. So in my book, you can dip into at any time. The chapters are very short. Most will take you only 2 to 3 minutes to read, but they are very, very, very profound. So if you pick up one of them and read it, and it triggers something in you, and you think about it, and you think about how does this apply to me in my life, and what can I do differently to take advantage of it, then it will have made a huge difference. And that's what I'm looking to have happen.
great. Yes, indeed. There are 62 chapters, and that doesn't include the little handbook or reflective questions that you also include at the end. And it also includes a number of case studies that you artfully integrate throughout the whole book. So I want to jump into some of the chapters that jumped out for me. And by the way, you described it as dynamite for the soul, each one of these chapters. Where did that term come from?
I don't know. I think one of my students referred to my course, Creativity and Personal Mastery, as TNT for the soul. He didn't use the word soul, but he used something similar.
Yeah.
And I figured dynamite for the soul is a good description because it really is intended to shake you up, to show you that what you think you know ain't necessarily so.
To quote the great, I think it was Fats Waller. I think who said that. I may have that wrong, but so let's just jump in with a topic that plagues many of us, and that's why do we become fearful and resentful, Srikumar? So
We become fearful and resentful because we make demands on the universe. All of the stress in our life comes from our having a rigid view of this is the way the universe should unfold, and the universe pays no attention whatsoever to what we like to have happen. And we resist it and we resent it. And in that resistance and resentment, fear, anxiety, nervousness, and all the rest of the stuff that ails us comes into play.
and then, well, we end up in, to use your term, a rabbit hole, do we not?
Yeah. Think about it. Anything that's causing you stress, it's not the thing that's causing you stress. It's your insistence that that thing be different from what it is.
I like how you phrase this about sort of in a way, my words, the universe owes us, we don't owe the universe. And part of that is also the fallacy that you tackle in one of their chapters is if I could get them to change, not me, it's them.
Yeah.
What about that fallacy, Srikumar? So,
Well, let me ask you a question, John. How successful have you been in getting other people to change, particularly when they have no particular inclination to change?
not very well.
I agree with you. And yet, we're always trying to fix people. We try to fix everyone. We try to fix our partners, our children, our bosses, our customers. And not people don't have a great deal of success in fixing others. So this attempt itself is futile. So if you accept the fact that the only person you can change is yourself, and even that is not easy, my friend, but at least you have a shot at it. If you do that, all of a sudden you'll find that the world rearranges itself to adapt to the new person you are becoming. And all of a sudden you realize it's just fine. I don't really need to fix so much of the world or so many people in my circle.
Great. Well, let's touch on this one point here because it's critical and it's essential to your work as an executive coach and many of the people we know who are executive coaches is what holds us back from changing, making changes on our own lives. So
the primary thing that holds us back from making changes in our life is that we don't recognize the traps that we have fallen into. We all have mental models, John, and a mental model is a notion we have that this is the way the world works. And you've got dozens of models. You've got a model for how do I find a person to marry? How do I get a job? How do I get ahead in the job that I get? How do I bring up my children? You've got dozens of models. Some of these models may be in conflict with each other, and you may or may not be aware of the conflict. The problem is not that you have models. The problem is that you're not aware that you have models. You think this is the way the world works. But this is not the way the world works. This is your model of this is the way the world works.
yeah. That's so we're trapped within our own mental model, if we will. So,
Exactly.
so we're going to explore that a little further as we go along, but I'm digging into these questions now. So as if this fallacy of changing other people, and then we all have adversity, which is, so how do we cope with, call it disaster or adversity? What's your insights that you share with others, Srikumar? So,
well, let me put something to you. Any event, when it occurs, is just an event. It does not cause suffering. Let's say you lose your job. You now have a lot of free time. But the moment you take this event and label it, this is bad, this is terrible, at that instant, suffering begins. Suffering doesn't begin when an event occurs. Suffering begins when you define that event as this is terrible. There's an ancient Sufi tale which is very instructive. It talks about a man and his son, and they lived in a beautiful valley and they were very happy, but also very poor. The man got sick and tired of being poor. He decided he was going to become wealthy, and the way he chose was to breed and sell horses. He bought a stallion. Didn't have money to buy a stallion, so he borrowed heavily from the neighbors. And the very day he got the stallion, it kicked the top bar loose from the paddock where he housed it and ran away. And the neighbors came around. You were going to become a rich man, and your stallion has run away, and you still owe us money. You are screwed.
yeah.
The man shrugged his shoulder and said, good thing, bad thing, who knows? That stallion fell in with a group of wild horses which were close to where the man lived. He was able to entice them into the paddock which he had repaired, so escape was no longer possible. And all of a sudden, he had the stallion back plus a dozen wild horses. By the standards of that village, he was now a wealthy man.
Yeah.
And neighbors came around and said, we thought you were destitute, but fortune has smiled upon you. You are rich. And he shrugged his shoulder and said, good thing, bad thing, who knows? The man and his son started to break the horses so they could sell them on the market. And one of the horses threw the man's son and stomped on his leg, and it broke and it healed crooked. And the neighbors came around and said, he was such a fine young lad, and now he'll never be able to find a girl to marry him. How sad. And the man shrugged his shoulder and said, good thing, bad thing, who knows? That summer, the king of the country declared war on a neighboring country. And press gangs moved to the villages, rounding up all the able-bodied young men to serve in the army. But this man's son was spared because he had a crooked leg. And the neighbors came around and they had tears in their eyes. We don't know if we'll ever see our sons alive, but you still have your son with you. How lucky. And he shrugged his shoulder and said, good thing, bad thing, who knows? And it goes on like that forever. But there's an important lesson here. Can you recall any instance in your life when something happened that at the time it happened, you thought this is terrible? But now, after the passage of time and perhaps greater wisdom, you can say that wasn't so terrible after all, or even that was good?
Okay, absolutely. We all have setbacks in our lives. It's how we frame them and how we suffering a setback or being knocked down. It's that's not the issue. It's what you do next. I think, which would be
Well,
that's important.
I was speaking to the Global Executive Summit at the Entrepreneurs Organization. Somebody in the back raised his hand and was insistent upon being recognized. So I recognized him. And he said, Professor Rao, I've got a perfect example from you. He graduated from a top engineering college. He went to Stanford and got a master's, got a job with a high-tech company, and all his friends got jobs with other companies. So they were looking forward to carrying on their friendship and building their careers. But he had an immigration problem, as a result of which he had to leave the country. Hired a top immigration lawyer, tried to fight it, failed, so he had to go. And he thought his life was over. He had student debt, and when you have student debt in dollars and you're earning in rupees, it's not a very good position to be in. But he said, Professor Rao, as a result of my having to leave the country, I met this wonderful lady who's now my wife. I teamed up with a couple of my engineering school buddies and we started a company. It's going gangbusters. All my clients are in America. I come to America at least 6 times a year. And I got a picture perfect life. And none of this would have happened if I'd not been forced out of the country.
Another Sufi tale.
Yeah. So if something has happened to you, and at that time you thought it was bad, but you can now look back and say, hey, that wasn't bad, or even that was good. Is it possible? Is it just barely possible that what you're today about to label bad could in X years turn out to be wonderful? Is it possible? Just asking yourself that question will move you to a different emotional domain.
Right. Now,
but then if you ask yourself the next question, what can I do proactively to actually make it good? And you move seamlessly from the realm of despair to the realm of possibility.
I think that a powerful thought, and it's that matter of, to use my phrase, being knocked down, but saying, "Wait a minute, this is not the end. What can I learn from this?" And then developing the tactics or maybe the strategy for getting there. Would you agree with that? So, yeah. Great. Now
this is don't label things good or bad. Just label it as this happened. So whatever.
I can almost hear my wife saying that same thing. And yes, it is what it is. It's how you treat it. So toward that end, you say it's possible to achieve phenomenal results without struggle. Now, that doesn't seem possible. So explain where that's coming from, Srikumar. So
on the other hand, John, it is absolutely possible. Because here's how most of us live life. You set a goal for yourself and you try very hard to accomplish it. You succeed, life's a blast. You set a goal for yourself, you try very hard to achieve it, you fail, life sucks. We live our lives oscillating on a sinusoidal curve between elation and despair, and we spend altogether too much time on the despair end of the spectrum. It's a lousy way to live. There is a better way. And the better way is set a goal for yourself. By all means, set a stretch goal for yourself. But having set the goal, forget about it. That's right, forget about it. Because the purpose of a goal is to give you direction. Once the direction has been established, don't pay heed to the goal. Pay heed and pour your emotional energy into what are the things that I have to do in order to achieve the goal. In other words, invest in the process, not the outcome. The outcome is beyond your control. Any number of things can happen that you have no say over, which could completely derail you. Why think about all of those? But when you invest in the process and not on the outcome, you're not constantly beating yourself up on, am I reaching my goal? Am I close? Will this happen? And when you don't do that, stress pretty much leaves your life.
Right. And that, I think what you're a way of doing it in my vernacular would be do what you can do to your best and don't worry about where it's going to go. Trust yourself to keep doing it. And did I summarize that possibly?
Yes, instead of saying trust yourself, I would say trust the universe. It will do the perfect thing for you. Because here's something I want to leave your listeners with. We think the benefit of setting a goal and trying our level best to achieve the goal is achieving the goal. Wrong. The benefit of setting a goal and trying your level best to achieve the goal is the learning and growth that happen in you and to you as you try your level best to achieve the goal.
Now, is it also true that one might have a goal, say, I want to build my own company or whatever, and then I will take an interim step and I will go work for another enterprise. And then I find out I really like being an employee or I like doing this. So we change our goal. Do you come across that at all, Srikumar? Yeah.
We're always growing and evolving, and what calls to you today may not call to you tomorrow, and vice versa. So, yes, we're always changing, we're always evolving.
And what what I like about your book, with Modern Wisdom, Ancient Roots, is it is a book that does hit us right between the eyes, but it gives us a path forward. Yet you have a chapter, and I think it's the last one, that says you aren't going anywhere. So what does that mean? So.
What happens is it's part of a larger quote, John, which is there is nowhere to go, there is nothing to do, there is no one to do it anyway. And that actually is a direct reference to where we are in our spiritual lives. Because we have this misconception that we are a particular body mind intellect complex. I am John Baldoni. I'm a member of the MG100. I have this wonderful podcast. I'm interviewing Dr. Rao. All of that is a story. That's a soap opera. It's a role you're playing. It's not who you really are. Who you really are is pure spirit. You are awareness itself, awareness playing a role. And in that capacity, we are all one. There is only one awareness, and it pervades you and it pervades me. We just happen to be playing different roles in that awareness. When you anchor yourself in that, you notice that nothing is happening.
Yeah. Now, toward that, I want to integrate something on the upside of this, because we've been talking of tough issues, adversity, challenges, resistance, those kinds of things. But you talk about joy. How do we integrate joy into our lives? Sometimes we're our own worst enemy when it comes to that. Is that not true?
We are always our own worst enemy, and there is no thing why you can bring joy in your life. Stop blocking it. It's not something that you do. It's not something you bring into your life. It's always in you. All you have to do is let it emerge. I'll give you an example. Can you
Please.
select a scene of such spectacular beauty that it took you outside of yourself to a place of great calm and serenity? Mountaintop, the ocean, a beautiful valley. Do you know why that happened? That happened because somehow at that instant you accepted the universe exactly as it was. You didn't say that's a beautiful rainbow, but it's way off to one side. If I could move it 200 yards to the right, you didn't say that's a beautiful valley, but that tree has too many crooked branches, and you give me a chainsaw in 20 minutes and I'll fix it. No, the off center rainbow was fine. The tree with the crooked branches was perfect. And the moment you accepted the universe exactly as it was, your habitual wanting self dropped away. And when your wanting self dropped away, you experience the joy that has always been a part of you.
And I want, as far as this book, there's something that's important. We've been focusing on the you, the us, the me, though, but you have broadened it out to the oneness, the awareness that we are. And what's essential to that, and I know it's in the work you do, how do we become better colleagues? How do we help our colleagues succeed, Srikumar? So
the best way to do that is to recognize. Let me tell you a parable. This comes from the Native American tradition, and it talks about a young man who was growing up and about to take his place among the adults of the tribes. And the final rite of passage was a conversation with the medicine man. And the medicine man told him, here is this dog, kind, loving, intelligent, trustworthy, and here is this wolf, malevolent, violent, vicious, cruel, ready to snap at and kill anything. And the dog and the wolf are fighting. And the dog and the wolf are both inside you. The young man asked, which one's going to win? And the medicine man says, whichever one you feed. Inside each one of us, there are altruistic, let's help each other and make the world a better place impulses. And there is also a let me grab everything I can for myself and the devil take the hindmost impulses. And the two are always fighting. It is your job to selectively identify and feed the dog in yourself. It's also your job to selectively identify and feed the dog in everyone you meet. And when the dog in you becomes friends with the dog in the other person, magic happens in both your lives. But most of the time, or much of the time, we feed the wolf and don't even realize we're doing it. I'll give you an example. You're having a bad day at work, you go to the coffee machine, or a colleague comes up to you and says, I'm having a bad day at work, and you go, you're having a bad day at work? Let me tell you about my bad day at work. Your bad day at work easily tops his bad day at work, and you go off feeling smug.
Yeah.
You've just fed the wolf both in yourself and in the other person. If instead you'd gone, yeah, you're having a bad day, I'm having a bad day, what can we both work here? What can we collectively do to make sure that nobody has such a bad day again? And now you started to feed the dog. So, in every conversation you have with your partner, with your children, with your boss, with your colleagues, with the Uber driver who takes you to the airport, ask yourself, what am I doing? Am I acting, speaking, behaving in a manner that leaves this person more optimistic about themselves, feeling better about their position? Or am I doing things that send them into a downward vortex? Am I feeding the dog or am I feeding the wolf? When you start feeding the dog, you find that you feel better and the world becomes, frankly, a better place. That's how you go around helping others.
Well, I would call that acting with grace. And as you know, I on this show,
That's
I
a
ask
beautiful name, by the way.
I ask every guest a story about grace. Is there one you've been sharing wonderful stories? Is there one in particular you'd like to share with us, Srikumar? So,
Share with you what? Repeat your question, John.
a story about grace that you'd like to share with us. So,
Yes, and this is true of the vast majority of people in MG 100. The very notion you have that I want to be in a position where I can be of service is grace. Think about how many people there are who don't have a clue, who are out there, let me get everything I can for myself. And they're living in a very tough world because they see it as a very tough world. But if you tell them, you can get what you want by helping others, it will not make any sense to them. It'll seem counterintuitive. So, the very nature of it, the fact that you can accept that this is the way to go, is itself an act of grace that you have received.
I love that. And actually, to get back, it wraps up what you have said. It's how we frame it, how we interpret it, how we look at the world. Will I be part of the problem or part of the solution? And it's open-heartedness. Is that correct?
Completely.
Great. Oh, great. Srikumar, we're coming to the end of our program. I could keep on going and going and going, but I want to ask, excuse me, how can people get a hold of you? How can they find you? So,
well, a good place to start is my website. It's www.therao Institute, THERAO Institute.com. They can go to listen to my TED Talk on the main TED platform. And if you go to YouTube and pop my name in the search engine, Srikumar Rao, dozens of videos will pop up.
Great. Well, we will do that. I will put those into the notes on the thing. And thank you for an enlightening conversation. And I love the book, Modern Wisdom, Ancient Roots. Srikumar Rao, Dr. Srikumar Rao, it has been such an honor to speak to you today. And thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. So,
thank you, John. And I'd like to emphasize that I do speak, but it's not my wisdom. This is the wisdom of the greatest masters the world has ever known. I'm just a translator.
Well, thank you.